Hello and welcome to today's National 8A webinar. I'm Melissa Saz, the Executive Director of the National 8A Association. We are a nonprofit with a mission to provide education and guidance for all aspiring, current, and graduate 8As. We're also proud to work with all types of minority small businesses, including hub zones, veteran-owned, women-owned, JVs, agencies, large primes, and industry professionals. Before we officially begin, I'd like to note that this webinar is being recorded and all presentation materials will be posted on our website. If you'd like to ask a question, please use the chat box and select everyone or email us at events@national8aassociation.org. I'd now like to welcome and then turn the mic over to today's presenter, Liz Walker, who is the Associate Small Business Director of the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers. She's going to talk through us of how to do business with the Army Corps of Engineers and then answer some of your questions. So without further ado, welcome Liz, and I'll turn it over to you to get started on the presentation.
Thanks so much for having me. Super excited to talk to you guys today and provide some information on how to do business with us. So wanted to kind of start out with a preface that we have a footprint across the nation. So wherever you are, we are too. And as you can see on the left-hand side of the slide, wanted to be able to kind of break down how are we, where are we, and how would you engage with us. So I'm at our headquarters in DC. I'm at home today. But kind of down from there, then we are geographically put together by regions, and we call those divisions. And then within a division, we'll have district offices, and think of those as field offices. And so, that might cross multiple states. You can kind of see here on the graph, if you see everything in the red on the left-hand side, that is one division, but there are multiple field offices within that that are going to be available to you. And so when you're thinking like, who should you go talk to? Where should you go talk to? All of the buying, all of the contracts are executed out of our districts. So the lowest level out of our field offices is where you're going to see all of the execution take place. We are very lucky enough to have a small business professional at every single level. So if you are looking to do business with Savannah, there's a small business professional there that is deeply ingrained with that area, and they can tell you all about how to do business with their specific district. So definitely resources at all levels. We also do have a small business professional at a division, and I'd say the best time to reach out to them is maybe you want to do work in a specific geographic region, but you're not quite sure where you fit in. They can help kind of navigate you through their division to say where you fit in. Also, if you were ever unable to get in touch with the local small business professional, they're the resource for you. If all else fails, you also have myself and my awesome team at headquarters, and we can kind of navigate you the right place based on your capabilities. And at the end of this, I'm going to show you some awesome resources we have on our website that'll help you see where do you fit. One thing that's kind of important to note about the core is how do we buy things? And it's going to be a variety of ways, but we do a lot of standalone contracts, I would say in the thousands. That does include 8A sole sources that we'll talk about, and you're going to find those on sam.gov. We also do use in some cases like government-wide vehicles like SOUP or GSA. I'll say those are more limited for us because we don't do a ton of professional service buys here. So that might be, I would say, more related to some of our centers. We have 4 centers of excellence, and they do buy a lot more professional services. So for example, Huntsville, they are our largest center. They are basically the equivalent of a region in terms of what they buy. Some of that does span like IT. It also includes construction. Then we have our R&D arm with our Engineering Research and Development Center, ERDIC, if you've ever heard of that, in Mississippi, and they do a ton of our R&D buys. So if you're looking for like CIBR, that's where you would find that. And then we have 2 more centers, the Army Geospatial Center, that's out of Alexandria. So if you're looking any of like that GeoInt, that would be the arm that we would link you up with. So definitely professional services within there. And then anything that headquarters ever needs to buy, our Humphreys Engineering and Support Center, they're also located in Alexandria. They do all of the purchasing on headquarters' behalf. So, for instance, if my office has a requirement, I don't get to buy it myself. Hexa would provide that service for us. So I'd say those 4 specialty centers for all my professional service friends out there, those are going to be where you find a lot of them. Everyone else construction, facility services, A&E, those are all going to be within the geographic area of offices out of all of our districts. But you can expect to see that we like to put in place a lot of single award and multiple award task order contracts. So IDIQs are our forever friend in the Corps. You'll often hear those referred to as SATOCs and MATOCs at the Corps, which might be different than other agencies, but that's kind of some of our lingo. So I would say when we're looking at a requirement and we get something, some of the first things we're going to look at, just like, common sense, how fast does water run somewhere, the easiest path. We're first going to look into our internal IDIQ, see if that can cover anything. If we don't have an IDIQ that covers it, then that's when we're going to start expanding and looking outside of that. That's when you're going to see RFIs that we welcome you to respond to kind of help us craft what that acquisition strategy should look like. So I kind of mentioned this before, but just want to really foot stomp. There are completely free resources for you out of each one of our districts, and that's through all of our small business professionals, someone like me at every single one of our locations, that's really kind of able to give you the insight for that area of exactly how you're going to be successful there. And so we can kind of move on then, now that you kind of have a little bit of the background of where we are, of what are our business lines and our mission, if you're not familiar with them. So we do have the civil works side of the house. And on a few of these next slides, if any of you might be thinking about like, hey, I heard a lot about the infrastructure and you guys are getting a ton of money coming your way, that does fall under our civil works side of the house. And I'm going to talk about that on the next slide of how can you see some of that work coming down the pike and prepare for it. But we also have a military mission side of the house. That's where like our milcons fall under military construction. So if we're building brand new buildings, that's where you're going to see that side come out. A ton of environmental. So if there is any environmental remediation or cleanups, you're going to see a lot come out of that area. Emergency operations. If anyone has ever seen those blue roofs after a hurricane, that is the Corps coming out there to make sure that we can help. And oftentimes in a lot of these scenarios, we are partnering with local and state governments to provide a lot of that support. And then, I mentioned, which I think is not always known as well, that we actually have a research and development arm of the house, and they are creating some super cool things out there. Like, who thought a concrete lab could be awesome? It is. So trying to see how can we, in the operations and the mission that we execute, how can we make sure that we are doing the most innovative ways to provide support for that. Just a little example, if it tickles anyone's fancy, there was a CIBR contract that was done maybe a year or two ago, and every railroad that is out in the US, when something comes across and part of the railroad gets damaged, they have to right now fully replace that whole piece. Well, they're looking at some technology that a CIBR supported, where they would basically have this piece of equipment that would run the course of the railroad, identify what needed to be fixed, and fix it instead of having to replace the whole piece. So that's just kind of one picture for you of what R&D is doing in the construction world. On this slide, you're also going to see our top 5 NAICS as an agency. And so if any of those kind of fall into your wheelhouse, you're definitely going to be wanting to look at the requirements that we have coming up. Okay, so I just mentioned a little bit about that increased civil works mission. So we did receive a bulk funding from the IIJA that was passed this year. And so we also received some disaster relief supplement appropriations as well. And so what does that mean to us? Like, where are all these projects located and where are they going to be? They actually develop work plans, almost like a forecast, if you will. Not quite all the same information you might see on a forecast, but it will tell you locations of work, project, also like the estimated value. I would say the things that's missing that you would normally see on a forecast would be like, when do you expect to see it executed, and like a NAICS associated with it or a procurement strategy. Those you will not find on the work plans, but that's going to help you see, okay, where do I want to position myself? Where do I want to support? Because these projects might not all be happening right this second. This is the time right now to prepare yourself and look at those work plans and start that strategy. Start seeing, okay, how can I get in? How can I start meeting? And when I am meeting with small business professionals, whether that be, with capability brief one-on-one or at events, I can say, hey, I've looked at these work plans. I see this work is coming down the pike. I'd be happy to help support that. So the flip side of that, which I would say we're very lucky at the Corps, We also have seen this year that advancing equity in federal procurement, where we are looking to see, hey, the SDB goal is going up from 5% to 15% by 2025. Also, things like category management stewardship. So, how can we be using more category management principles that support small business, and then also an increase to new federal entrants? That is definitely something that we're monitoring. And so, how do we kind of put these two buckets together and make it work? So we've come up with a small business approach out of USACE that we're kind of looking to see how can we marry these up. So we want to be able to leverage this increased mission opportunity to really enhance these other areas we have. So, how can we make sure that we're including small business, especially SDBs, when we have all of this new work coming out? And whether that be as a prime or a sub, how can we make sure that we're capturing that? Our goal this year was increased in the small disadvantaged business area from 19% to 26%. That is the highest, at least in the data I looked at, it has ever been. We are working super hard to try to achieve that. As everyone knows, our biggest quarter is ahead of us. So definitely more areas of opportunity there. We are also excited that the current moratorium on the 8A bona fide offices is still in place this year, because that definitely helps us in the construction realm be able to consider as many 8As as possible and not have to be only considerate of the geographic area of where the work is going to be performed. But a couple other things I just wanted to say of like, but what else are we doing? So we have made a very large push to make sure that we are including either small business pools or reserves on our IDIQs. Because big shifts like this, if I say the way we do most of our work is through internal IDIQs, it makes it really hard to shift when you have massive government changes come down the pike. So we have to start thinking today of how are we incorporating these into our future IDIQ strategies, whether that be when we're doing an unrestricted procurement, making sure that we're including reserves, which you probably, if anyone does work with us, are seeing that a lot more out there if we are not able to totally set it aside, as well as making sure, hey, how can we even break out requirements into separate areas where maybe we have, work that's set aside just for 8As, works that's set aside just for SDV OSBs based on the market research. A couple other things I just wanted to kind of foot stomp. So we actually were successful last year in categorizing all of our small business spend as tier one sum credit or higher. And kind of like, what does that mean? Why is that important? Well, it means that we are already supporting the initiatives in that OMB memorandum to make sure that we are making sure we are being good stewards of including category management when it makes sense, but also preserving small businesses. So we are able to now preserve the way that we normally do work, meaning 8A sole sources, meaning if we are keeping things localized intentionally instead of regionalizing a procurement because we're going to have more small businesses be able to participate. That's all included in our category management package that got approved. So we feel confident that now our way of life, our way of doing business is secured in the future. And just some other things we've really been working on mission wise is enterprise level, targeted outreach, making sure that we're getting the word out there in instances such as this, and kind of that engagement and education, as well as improving our forecasting. Okay, so like fun facts. What could be more fun than talking through what opportunities, how can you normally expect, how can you play? So over the last 3 fiscal years, we have awarded more than $14 billion to small disadvantaged businesses. So hopefully that like got your ears perked up because that was billion with a B. And that's just as a prime contractor opportunities. So there definitely is a lot of area for small businesses to play. Typically on average, I'd say about we average around 8 billion a year in prime contracting opportunities to small businesses overall. So a hefty amount of that is in the small disadvantaged business category. And that really aligns with our mission really well because we have a lot of one-time requirements where we can use 8As for. And then we have some stats that you can see here on, exactly how many actions were available in FY21. And something interesting that we are starting to track significantly more is starting to look more in that full and open realm and say, okay, in full and open competition, how many times are we seeing small businesses win? And you can see here we tickled that down all the way to 8A, but I can tell you it's roughly 40% of the time. And some of that might be because they want to reserve, but here's the message that we're sharing kind of across the board internally with our leadership as well as externally is that means that we have super capable contractors not only performing on our small business set asides, but they are winning out and beating in full and open competition. So, preparing for that next step and preparing, are they ready to take on more? So we are super excited to see that and are kind of tracking that metric more than we have before. We definitely look in this area of, how many industries do we represent? How can we reach out to them? And something that we are starting to highlight more as well as subcontracting. So on an annual basis, just to give you guys an idea, last year we did $15 billion in subcontracting. That is way more, that's almost double what we did in prime contracting. So that is a number not to be discounted. If you've never done work with us before, subcontracting could be a very viable way in for you. And as you can see, last year we have the metrics on here. Almost $1 billion, 840 million went directly to small disadvantaged businesses. So I would say, there are multiple ways to get in with us, whether that be as a subcontractor or a prime contractor. We'll kind of talk through those resources to figure out what's best for you. Okay, so how can you get ahead of these projects? What's kind of the best strategy? So I'll say the first two I've highlighted if you've never done business with the government at all. First, definitely register in SAM and reach out to your local PTAC because they have a ton of free resources that can help you do that. So kind of just put that there to just as your star. If you've never done work with us before, those are definitely your first steps. But let's say, you just haven't been able to break into USACE yet. Review those work plans, and you'll have these slides available to you. It has the website. Also, if you go to our small business website, we have a link that will take you right over. If you're interested in that IIJA infrastructure work, take a look at those work plans. But we also have a forecast. So I would say last year, or this year might have been the first year, I took every single district or center forecast and rolled it all up into one humongous forecast that we keep intentionally in an Excel document for you, so you are able to sort it however you please. We update that semi-annually. You may find more updated documents at a district level of forecasting, but we do that twice a year and we put it on our headquarters website. And I say that because that's going to help you identify who do you want to target. And that might be, you might want to target someone in your geographic area because that's easier for you to support. And that might be the best way to break in. Or you might want to look at maybe the specific type of work. And maybe you want to be able to target this specific type of work occurring. And you want to know what offices are going to have that. This enterprise forecast is going to help you see where do you fit in our organization. Okay, now you figured out where you fit. And I would say, you know, think small, don't think big. Start with one district, work your way into one district. So where you think you're going to be most successful, taking into consideration, are you going to be competitive? Do you have the past performance that backs up what they're going to buy? Do you have, I would say, like the requisite capabilities to be able to support that area? And that's where you try to break in first as a subcontractor or a prime contractor. And then you're going to research that district and you want to know everything about what that district buys. And there is resources that we have. Again, I'll show you on our headquarters website, but on their website too, because you want to know them. You want to be able, when the next step meeting with our small business professionals, you want to go in there already having an idea what they buy, how they buy it, and how you fit in and are going to be successful. So then once you've done that, suggest meeting with our small business professional. That can be at an industry event or one-on-one. And I will just caveat that there is a lot of ebbs and flows out there, meaning that some districts are so influxed with a crazy amount of work that their one person doesn't have the same amount of time to do outreach as maybe someone else who has just a less busy district of workload. So, workload we have some offices that literally we have someone on a source selection board almost every single week because that's just the amount of work that they push out. And so in those cases, they have less time. And we're kind of working to identify in those areas where they have less time, how can we start articulating that workload and maybe getting more support to have more than one person in some of those offices. But we do a ton of industry days on an annual basis. We do a whole agency industry day that is in collaboration with the Society of American Military Engineers. They do a small business conference in November. Next year, it's going to be in Nashville. So if you wanted to meet with every single one of our small business professionals, you will find all of them in one place in Nashville next year. And, a great way to engage, but would definitely say, check out our events. But also, like start looking at what we have posted on sam.gov. Start looking at what's out there. Who has those current contracts? Who can you be a subcontractor for? Can they be your partner in the future? These are ways to help prepare you so when the work comes, you already have a plan of attack. You're already ready to do that. And I know like people always put this on there and it just probably sounds like lip service, but market research is everything. Market research is what helps us as small business professionals advocate for you guys, whether that be a small business set aside, a socioeconomic set aside. We can't do anything without the market research. So if you are truly interested in our requirements, actively showing that you want to be our partner is something that the districts are going to look at. So now let's kind of just take a look at like 8A sole source and competitive actions just ourselves. So 8A sole sources, I would say review the forecast. In some areas, we have identified that they are going to be an 8A sole source already. And so those, you can already go at it and say, hey, I see you've identified this. Do you have someone in mind yet? I would also say there may be opportunities that are not on there yet because we are a fee for service organization, meaning other agencies bring work to us. So it's very possible on a daily basis that work changes. So when you meet with them, definitely sharing with them your capabilities, how you fit in, and that you're interested in 8A or competitive opportunities. I'm just going to give you a hint. Our districts want to hear that you are there more than just for sole source opportunities. They want to see that you're interested in competing on stuff as well. So kind of just make sure you can work that in. And then 8A competitive opportunities, we're posting those through sam.gov, let's say when it's like a recompete coming up or something new, or we may have existing vehicles already in place. Maybe we're using GSA stars or something like that. Or we maybe already have an IDIQ in place that's an 8A set aside. So what are these additional resources I keep talking about? I came to the Corps about 2 years ago, and I always share that when I interviewed for the job, I was looking on the website and I was having trouble finding stuff, which makes me feel like, how is a small business ever going to find anything if I can't find anything? And I have to say, my team has knocked it out of the park. We put together a diverse team from every single level of our organization and thought, what can we put on here to help people be best prepared to work with us? Um, so on the right-hand side is what you'll see when you go to our website, just a picture of how it looks. But we have information down from like, how do you get started? You're a new federal contractor, down to our enterprise forecast. We even have posted information on there of every district and center. What is their top NAICS? How much money do they spend? And their contact information. So if maybe you just say, I want to work with the largest district in all of USACE, and that's going to be my approach, you'll be able to seriously just download that and take a look at it and see what NAICS are they using to buy that. So that's a great resource if you're seeing, how do I fit in? Where do I fit in? That's a great thing to keep in mind. We also are doing better about putting our upcoming events on there. We also have some contracting information and strategies on there. But like here is my absolute favorite, and this is because it all came from like our district folks. They put marketing 101, the real deal for contractors, meaning really how do you market to us? Really what do we care about on our side of the fence about hearing from you? And then helpful hints when you meet with district offices. Again, this is straight out of the mouths of people you're going to be meeting with, giving you this valuable feedback. It's like a checklist. How can you prepare? How can you come in and wow me? And one thing that we didn't have on this deck, but I just kind of wanted to throw out there is that so when we're looking at things, there is if you want to come in and win with us, I can give you one definition. And this is just going to be true no matter where you go because it came straight from our commanding general's mouth. So winning with USACE is when we have contractors delivering quality projects on time, within budget, safely. So if you want to know how do you win, how do you impress us, you do those 4 things. And so for my office, what I often tell people is, so for me to see success in my office, it's small businesses that are delivering quality projects on time, within budget, safely. And again, that can be as a prime or a subcontractor. Hopefully I didn't rush through that too fast, but I definitely want to make sure that I left time for your questions. That's kind of an overview of how to do work with us, and excited to be able to answer questions you guys have.
Awesome. Thank you, Liz. The number one question is, how do we get your presentation? So that will be posted on our website. once we're done with this webinar. So I see that Haley had gone ahead and put that link into the chat. We'll also circulate that around to all the registrants. But one of the questions that we're getting is, where can I find the current forecast and how often is it updated?
So the current forecast is on our website. So I'll say the enterprise forecast I was talking about that has every single district and center is semi-annually. We're actually just getting ready to post the new one by the end of this month. So if you go to the link on here, you're going to be able to sort through to find our forecast that's right there. If anyone has trouble, just reach out to me. Happy to send you the link. But it's directly on our small business page, updates semi-annually. If you wanted to know, like there are some districts, I'll just like give like Norfolk a shout out that I think they update theirs like every 6 weeks. So we're only asking for their update semi-annually, but they may be updating their website even more frequently.
Great. Another question that we're getting is, what is the best way to be considered for an 8A sole source contract?
Yeah, so I definitely think the best way to be considered, now is a good time, but the beginning of the year is also a really, really good time to get in with those small business offices. And when you get in there, show them that you have the past performance, to be able like requirements that you're interested in doing. Also, I would definitely say just sharing anything you can about how your capabilities align with what the district needs. Making sure you're helping fill those gaps is the best way in. And again, in the beginning of the year, that's when they may be more willing to try contractors out. And towards the end of the year, that may be when they're trying to look with like the ones that they know they already have, proven success with to do those last minute requirements that come up. Not in all cases, but just kind of sharing some perspective.
Yep. We just got another question from Robert asking, what's involved with companies that want to sell goods or services when disasters hit after registering with FEMA?
Yeah, there is that disaster recovery registry that I would definitely say put your contact information in. And in some cases, it's kind of finding what district is doing that work. We may already have an IDIQ in place like we have a Blue Roof IDIQ, for example. So in some cases, if we're doing that, we're going to go to that IDIQ contract holders. So I would say looking at those IDIQs we have in subcontracting, or knowing what district is doing the work when that disaster hits and getting with them directly.
And then we got one more question. Are you on target to meet the increased SDB goal of 26% for this fiscal year?
I knew I was going to get that question, so I checked it right before. As of today, we are sitting at 19%. However, we still have our busiest months of the year, 3 months left, where we see a majority of our dollars get executed. So I would say as of right now, I feel pretty confident that 8A sole sourcing is what we do a lot at the end of the year. So I think that we're going to get as close as we possibly can.
Awesome. Well, I don't see any other questions coming through right now, but that does not mean that you guys can't still ask Liz questions. You have her contact information within these slides. You also have our contact information. So if you think of anything, or if you're listening to this as a recording, please email one of us and we'll get you these answers to your questions. I want to thank you so much, Liz, for doing the presentation for us today. I know that we'll be posting this on our website, so we'll get continuous feedback on it and some questions that come in. But yes, thank you again very much, and I hope to see you all that are on this webinar today at one of our upcoming conferences or at our next webinar. Well, thank you, everyone.